Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. Why is it that seeking validation is often the first step towards self-betrayal? Now, we are social animals and we all need praise and appreciation, especially from people we care about, family, friends, co-workers, bosses. But validation and approval are two different things. It's like you keep waiting for them to approve of what you're going to do or what you want to do in life before you can take the first step. It's like you need to seek permission. It's like you need this fact that they are going to be okay if you decide to do this. So everybody has to be on the same page, everybody has to agree that you're going to do this, and everybody should approve. That is one of the ways to ensure that you betray who you really are. And that happens to a lot of us, especially because there's a lot of pressure. And what ends up happening is that we want people to like us, we want people to be nice to us, we don't want to be alone, we want friends and we want family to be proud of us and be nice to us. So in the pursuit of that, often we end up doing and saying things that are not really true of us, but rather what will make other people validate us. So our worthiness, our desires, our dreams, our goals, everything is at the whims and fancy and mercy of other people. And that can make someone, anyone, extremely miserable and unhappy. Why? Because there's a dissonance between who we really are and what are we portraying ourselves to be. Because what happens is that when you constantly want other people to approve of who you are, want other people to approve of your desires, of your actions, sooner or later it starts to seep into you, and eventually what happens is that you start seeking it for every little thing. And that's a very, very bad place to be, because one, it almost certainly ends up making monsters out of people. And we all can become that person. Any kind of excessive control over somebody in any aspect of their life makes the person who has control a monster. Because everybody likes power, everybody likes to have power. And when somebody is just taking it and giving it to you, it can make you a monster. And then what happens? The situation, the relationships start to get toxic because there is a betrayal of who you really are. There is a big chasm between who you are and who you have to be so that you continue to get that approval, you continue to get that validation. That is why, even though it is painful, especially for people who did not receive the validation and approval they needed, that every child needs when they are growing up, it's very, very difficult for those people. Why? Because when we are growing up, our primary caregivers, our parents, grandparents, and the family or people that we have around us, they are supposed to give us unconditional approval, unconditional validation, unconditional love. But when we don't receive that, when we are made to jump through hoops to be acceptable, when we are made to deny parts of ourselves to be approved of, when we are made to change facts or deny things so that they can validate who we are, it becomes a pattern later in adulthood, and that can be very difficult to deal with. And that is why a lot of people who do that end up being very miserable. And I have done it myself so many times. What happens is that ultimately, sooner or later, you start to feel upset because the other person or the other people, they start taking you for granted. They do not recognize the efforts or whatever it is that you're making towards a relationship towards them. And also you start to feel as if you're living a lie. And then the mere seeking of validation, the mere seeking of approval now has kind of snowballed into you living a lie, where you're not being your true self, where whatever you're saying or doing is not authentic. You just don't realize who you could have become. We don't explore who we are. We don't really try to discover or try to create who we can be. So, perhaps if you've been doing that for a long time, if you've been made to feel that until and unless there is validation coming from people around you, there is approval coming from people around you, that's the only way you know what you're doing is right. It's a painful place to be, because we don't have a level of trust with our own self. We don't know if we can trust ourselves because we've not yet built a relationship with ourselves. We do not have a safe place within ourselves that we can work from. But maybe it's time to start building it. It's time to start building trust with ourselves. It's time to start developing the most important relationship in our life, which is with ourselves. And that is the way, the more you develop the relationship with yourself, the more you slowly learn to trust yourself. That is the way to make sure that you do not engage in patterns or behaviors that make you betray yourself. Of course, a lot of people are not going to like it, because everybody starts to get used to that kind of power, and that can be anybody. Let me tell you that you and I, anyone can be like that. But when you start taking your power back, it is going to annoy and inconvenience a lot of people, especially close relationships. So be prepared for that. But in the end, it is worth it. We only got one life. So instead of trying to seek validation from other people, which can leave us feeling very empty, hollow, and as if we're living a lie, it might be much more rewarding, okay? Despite the pain and despite the sadness that you might feel, it might be much more rewarding to start figuring out who we really are, to build a relationship with ourselves, to learn to trust ourselves, even though we know we are going to make mistakes, even though we know we are not 100% perfect. Nobody is. So that's it for today, and thank you for taking the time to watch the video, and I'll see you soon.